This is Ballyduane, where I bring the dog for her runs. It's impossible to judge if it's in focus. It's about a quarter of a mile, maybe a bit more than a quarter of a mile across. And the cliffs are, what, maybe 100 feet high? Maybe a bit more. It's difficult to judge. I was having a picnic and I was in behind that the life buoy thing. And I suddenly looked up and I realised that there was a massive overhang of soil directly above me. And I thought to myself, no point chancing it. I'd already seen some tumble down since I came into this place. It's quite amazing. They were extracting copper. I think it was copper, but I suspect there was other stuff that they were taking out of this as well. They call this the Copper Coast, and it's had copper mines going back to the Neolithic. Well, I suppose you would call it the Bronze Age as well, but it's the late Neolithic, and they were using stone axes to hack the copper from the rock face. And you see that gap over there? It's in places like that they found seams. And what they would do is they would put timber in front of the seam and light a fire at it. And it wouldn't melt the copper out of the rock, but what it would do was it would make the first couple of inches of the rock quite friable, and it was easier to break it off. This was discovered, maybe 30 years ago. No, 20 years ago now, by a professor from my university in Galway. But in a slightly different place. She loves chasing the seagulls and the little birds. Okay, I'll move down to the other end now. This is Jessy after the birds. This is that seam that I was talking about earlier. See how it's sliced, where they've taken out the pieces between the rock. And then here also, where they've gone straight in. In most cases, you can't see the evidence of the Bronze Age and Late Stone Age mining, because what they took was close to the surface, and subsequently the 19th century, 17th and 18th and 19th century mining exposed, they simply had better technology, and they followed the seams deeper. So they effectively destroyed what was on the surface to get at the deeper mine, the deeper seam. That's where I started taking this series, over there. Here's the Jessy. I think the fall, or I would say the tide here, is somewhat. Sorry, I have to get this a little bit level. The tide here is somewhat erratic, and the reason why there's very few people here on such a beautiful day is that kids can't swim here, so parents tend not to go where the kids are not safe. Just beyond those rocks there's a rip, a longshore drift, I think it's what it's called. It brings a rather fast stream running along parallel to the coast, so that if you went out, you'd instantly be taken, if you were any sort of a weak swimmer at all, for the first. Could easily be taken and drowned. So the parents don't bring kids here because of that. Well, let's put it this way: parents shouldn't bring kids here because of that. This is the cliff at the back again. From the other side, you can perhaps see the pattern in the rock there. I'm not quite sure what that blue rock is, but it's certainly a good deal harder than the rest of them. That little pinnacle that you see there in front, this one, is actually separate, totally separate from the cliff itself. It's standing out like a sea stack all on its own. But there's a difference there between that and the old red sandstone, which is quite hard, but it isn't anywhere near as hard as the rest of it. And then you have what seems to be up higher in the cliff, an outcrop of limestone. You see the stratification. But then you have these other strata, these other faults that are running through further up. But they're running at a 45-degree angle. But the overall thrust of this seems to be at 45. except for the ones that were containing the copper and whatever else was in it. I'm going to change now to a longer lens. What's in the distance is the pelvic head. It's a Norse term. There's a Gaeltacht speaking area there, Irish speaking, called Ring, and it's Munster Irish is spoken in that area. The dog is having great fun going through all this. There's quite a lot of plants on the rock face. These are clinging to the face.